Good morning or good evening from wherever you're attending today. Thank you for joining for the session. What I wanted to show was Python Cassandra driver. So we will get into that in a second. So the reason we want to learn about this driver is, first of all, I know most of us know Cassandra. Either we are Cassandra developers or Cassandra DBS. We have our clusters. Um, Usually, what happens is for testing, what we do is we create our clusters, and then that cluster will contain zero data. So we don't have data generated, right? Unless it is a real application in a real environment, you don't have data. So having three node cluster and not having any data is useless because you cannot do real good testing with your transactions and stuff. Now, um, on screen, what I'm showing you is a SSH client, and I love this product. So I've been using it for a really long time. And this is called MobaXterm. If you have not used it before, please start using it. You'll fall in love in that. Sorry, you'll fall in love with the product. I've been using it for 6 years now, and it's a wonderful product to use for your SSH client. All other clients will look like 40 years ago or 40 years old. This one looks like 2025. So check out MobaXterm. This is a very good product. Okay. So what I did for our session, we have a three node cluster here. It's a plain vanilla version of Cassandra. So always notice couple of things when I'm showing you. So let me clear my screen. And what you should notice is what is the server name. This is the server name, the highlighted piece. And also notice what user I'm logged into, because sometimes we might be switching to root user, we'll come back to Cassandra user, or we might log into a Python user. So you always want to notice which user I'm working on. Okay. So now, first of all, I connected to one of the nodes. I'm going to do node tool status minus minus resolve IP. Now, most people might already know the node tool status command. A lot of people I have noticed don't know about the resolve IP flag. When you give the resolve IP flag, instead of showing IP addresses, it will show host names. So that is the advantage of having resolve IP flag. Okay. Now, what you see here is a very basic Cassandra, which was installed on a single data center. We have three nodes, and you can see the data is like less than 200 kilobytes on 300 kilobytes on each node. There are 8 tokens handled by each node, 8 token ranges, and then you can see other data. Like all the three nodes are up and running. Okay. Now let me show you what version of Cassandra we are running here. This is a release, open source Apache Cassandra 3.119. So this is basically a very stable version, very recent version. We created a three node cluster, and you all know how to create the cluster. If not, you can watch other videos where I was teaching you how to install and configure Cassandra clusters. Um, so once you build your cluster, okay, cluster is ready. Let's say, for example, this is your test cluster. You might be running it at home. You might be running it at your work. Wherever you're running it, there is no data here. So obviously without data, it just feels like a dummy database or a cluster. So the idea is to have an application which almost looks like sales are happening every single second. Okay. That means continuously you will get data, and how do you generate that data? That is the whole topic today. And the topic is Python Cassandra driver. Okay. Now, Apache Cassandra itself is developed in Java, and there are a lot of drivers available to connect to Cassandra as a client. Obviously, this is not our job. If we are database administrators, we just manage the cluster and that's it. Our application teams will write code. They will write Java code, they will write Python code, they'll write some other code. The driver they're using, first let's talk about the driver. Okay. So this is the client connecting to the Cassandra server. So we are talking about the driver they will use to connect. Okay. First of all, we'll go to datastacks.com. And if you just look through the page, but you can skip to the end of the page, there is an option here called tools and downloads. So you click on the tools and downloads, and then you will see a bunch of other available options. I'm going to scroll a little bit down. So here, if you see, there is a drivers tab. So I'm clicking on drivers tab. And what you see here is under drivers tab on DataStax website, DataStax, they develop open source drivers. So the first tab is DataStax drivers. So let's talk about the DataStax provided drivers, right? When you click this link here or the drop down, you will see all these drivers which basically DataStax is developing for the community. So there is a C, C++ driver, there is a Java driver, Node.js driver, PHP driver. So you can use PHP as your front end client, and you can use this driver to connect to your Cassandra server or a cluster. You have a Python driver, Ruby driver. Now, if if we were the application team, what we would do is we'll click on this Python driver and go to download, right? Let me first review all the drivers available, then we'll go to the download and other stuff. Okay. So ODBC, JDBC drivers, these are for ODBC, JDBC kind of usage, and you can see there are several products you can connect to using these drivers. These are working between Apache Cassandra, Apache Spark. There is a combination of stuff there. There is a little bit of Hadoop also. And then you can see what platforms it supports, like if you want to get a package for Linux or some other platform. Now, DataStax actually develops and manages these first two tabs, which I was talking about, DataStax drivers and the ODBC drivers, ODBC, JDBC drivers. There are something called community drivers. So what DataStax does is that supports community developers who develop more drivers which are not supported by DataStax, but they're there. Meaning, if you were using Golang, you need a Golang client to connect to your Cassandra server or a database or a cluster. Here is your driver. Only difference between community drivers and the DataStax drivers, DataStax drivers are developed by DataStax team and they're maintained by them. They're all open source, meaning anybody from outside can contribute to the bug fixes or enhancements. Community drivers are completely developed by community developers, nothing to do with DataStax, but DataStax promotes them because DataStax as a single company cannot develop everything. So they also encourage the community to involve, and they develop more drivers, like say Perl driver, if you talk about Perl, Haskell, Scala driver. So we are now going to talk about Python driver basically. So we'll go back to the DataStax driver, Python driver, and download. Okay. Now I'm actually going to ignore going to the download. Instead, I'll show you how we can get this thing going and how we can configure our driver. What is that we need to do? Now, what I do generally for these kind of stuff, I have my own GitHub. So if you're not aware of my GitHub, then please bookmark this link. My GitHub is github.com/sarma1807. Now, what I do is you can come back frequently to check what projects I'm working on, what are the open source code I'm contributing to the community. One of the project I did earlier was Python Cassandra driver. So this is the topic for presentation today. So what I'll do is, imagine I am new to this particular GitHub. I'm going to go through the steps which are on this page, and I will try to set up the exact same thing on my client machine so that we can use our Python Cassandra driver to write some Python code. Actually, we are not going to write any code. Code is already on this GitHub page. We'll get it and use it. Okay. So let's get started. What it tells you is, okay, so the Python Cassandra driver is built by DataStax and distributed via this link. We already talked about that. At the point of, at the time of writing this particular article, Apache Cassandra 3116 was there, and we were using Python Cassandra driver 3.24.0. But today, when we start doing this on our exercise, we might get a latest driver. Okay, what I would do, I will always follow these numbers here, 0, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1. That puts it in order of how we have to do this setup. So first of all, download and setup driver. Okay. Now, before we get this started, we need a client machine which where we can run our Python code. Okay. So Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, all three of them are database cluster, database Cassandra nodes. So we want to have a separate client which is unrelated, completely unrelated to the Cassandra itself. This is just an application server. Okay. So I'll say host name, and you can see the IP, IF. Let's say, for example, we'll do host name minus I. Okay. So you can see the two IP addresses assigned to this particular host. Now, notice that this server name is Alloy, and PyCass is the user I'm logged in as on this server. Okay. Now on this server, again, it's a plain, very new server. Here we are not going to have anything related to Cassandra. Only thing we need is a Python Cassandra driver. Okay. Now, first thing we'll verify. Obviously, we need Python to run. So we'll say Python minus V just to make sure if Python is installed and is it available for us. So you can see Python 2.7.5 is already loaded onto the server when server was set up. This is not a server, this is a client, this is a application box. Okay. Now, what we need to do is we'll go back to the GitHub and see what is the first step, right? What we need is we always want some of these extra packages available on our Linux machine. So first thing you want to do is that EPEL release. What is that is? It is, this is EPEL. What it is extra packages for enterprise Linux. Okay. First of all, I want to show you what version of Linux I'm running here. So etc system release. This is the file which will contain the information about what version of Linux are we running on this machine. So you can see it is CentOS Linux 7.8, pretty new. It is still a very stable release, and that's what we are running right now. Okay. Now, to do any extra installation of packages and stuff, we need to log in as root user. So I'm going to do su minus, and I'm changing as super user, put my password in. I'll just clear the screen. And here, if you notice, we are on server or machine Alloy with root user. Okay. Now, first of all, what we need to do is we need that EPEL packages. Okay. So first of all, what we do, RPM minus QA. These are all system commands, and you can learn as you go. Red Hat Package Manager. I'm querying the available list of installed packages. grep for EPEL. Okay. Extra packages for enterprise Linux. So you see that first command RPM grep is not there. So I'm going to just install these packages. Okay. So what we need to do is we just copy paste that command and with a flag Y, meaning don't ask me about during the installation, it will ask whether you want to really install or not. I'm just saying yum install EPEL dash release. Basically, it will check what release of operating system you're on, and it will install that packages, required packages for you. Okay. So you can see something happened, and finally it says complete. Okay. So that was the step one. What we did was extra packages for enterprise Linux. That's what we installed. Okay, done. Let's go back to GitHub. Next thing we want is there is something called pip. Pip is a package manager for Python. Okay. Now we can verify if pip is there. Otherwise, we can install it. So first thing we'll do rpm minus qa grep pip, and you can see there is something in the response in the output, but this is something else. This is a library pipeline. It is nothing to do with Python. So what I'll do, I'll go back here, get this command yum install python pip. Okay. Again, minus y for do not ask me question while installing, just install it. Now we are running Python 2.7.5. So it is going to verify the version we have on the system. It will go get the packages. So obviously you need to have internet connection to do these commands. Okay. Internet connection from your machine you're installing it on should have a direct internet connection. So it can go get these packages and install them. Now, if you notice, it completed installation. Okay. Let me do one small thing here. Earlier, we were running a RPM minus QA. Let's run that again and make sure that it installed the Python related pip package. Okay. So that highlighted line, it tells me we have the pip installed. Pip is Python package manager. Just like RPM is a Red Hat package manager, this is a Python package manager. Okay. So scrolling through this page, you see the next step is we are checking whether Cassandra driver, which is Python Cassandra driver, is it installed or not on this machine. Okay. So let's clear screen again. Now I'm still running these commands as root user, and I'm going to do that command. And what you see here is just a informational message which says, there is a new version of pip available. You should be actually upgrading it. Okay. Now, for now, I'm going to ignore that warning message or informational message. What it did not come back is that Cassandra driver is not installed on this machine, but we need that Cassandra driver for our code to work. So we're going to take that next command. And notice that this is not the RPM install, it's a pip install, meaning Python package manager install Cassandra driver. Now, you don't have to do anything other than this to get the package installed on your box. It will go verify the correct package for you. It will download it and install it. Okay. Now let me clear screen and let me do one more thing. So let me run this pip show Cassandra driver command. Now you see there is a informational message, but there is lot more information printed now. What it tells you is we have the Cassandra driver. The version it installed is 3.25.0. The summary of this package is nothing but it's developed by DataStax. It's a driver for Cassandra. Okay. And you can also see the Python Cassandra driver homepage if you want to learn more about it. Now, that's all we need to learn for installing the Python Cassandra driver so far. Now, this particular driver is written in such a way that it can work with these versions of Python. You can see it works with plenty of versions of Python. Okay, so let's go back and look at the page again. Now that basically finishes the Python Cassandra driver installation. Okay, this is just showing you the output. So far we executed all these commands and it is just showing the same output here on the page. That means we are done with the first page. So notice that we are running on the step 1. Okay. Now let's go back to the Python Cassandra driver and see what is the second step. So this one. So this one is nothing but it's a simple demos. It's a second step. So there are a bunch of files here. What I would like to do, instead of going through the GitHub page like this, I would like to get this code, right? I would like to download this code onto my machine, the client machine. Okay. Now what I can do, I can go here. This is the URL I need to download and I can copy this. Okay. Now, how do I get this package on my Linux box? So First of all, we need something called Git. Okay. So then what we can do is we can do a Git clone, right? Let me check if Git is installed. So you can see there is no Git installed. It's just a Git client. What I'm going to do is I will install this Git client. Okay. Yum install. Now this is nothing to do with Python Cassandra driver. That's why I did not document it on that website. But here is the command you can install Git with. Okay. And what I'm doing here is just installing the Git package. So let it finish whatever it is doing. Okay. So you can see here it is downloading a lot of stuff, which is all required for the Git to work. And definitely, you should keep an eye on this package names. Okay. So there is a package name which I always wonder what it is. Look at the name. It is Advaita. So all of us know what is Advaita or Advaitam, right? Okay. So this Git package itself is installed. What I'm going to do is clear screen. And remember, I was doing which Git. So that means our Git itself is installed. Okay. Now, so far what we did, just a quick review. We installed the extra packages for Enterprise Linux. We installed the pip, which is the Python package manager. Then we installed the Python Cassandra driver using that pip command. Then, because I want to download something from Git or GitHub, I installed Git using the yum install command. Okay, so that's all we did so far. Now, exit from the root shell. I'm going back into my Python cas user. You can look at the user. So this is a basic user who is going to run some Python code on a client machine. There is no Cassandra on this box. Only thing installed here is there is a Python Cassandra driver. That's all we installed. Okay. Now, let me clear screen and look at the PWD. I'm in this folder here, df-hp, which is to see how much space we have. We have plenty of space. There is nothing running out of space. What I would like to do, I'd like to clear screen and show you ls-lh. So you see there are no folders or nothing here. Okay. What I would like to do, I would like to get that Python Cassandra driver code we wrote or we saw on the GitHub, this particular code, I would like to download. So first thing, I will find that particular Git link, copy it by clicking on this small notepad kind of thing. And then we come back into our shell, git clone this particular package. Okay. The what I copied as a URL, I pasted it here. That's all I did. Okay. Now what I'm doing essentially is I'm downloading the whatever is on the GitHub. I'm downloading that entire package by doing a git clone command. Okay. I will let that run and you see quickly it finishes. Let us look at what it downloaded. Okay. So what it did, it created Python Cassandra driver folder. So let's go into Python Cassandra driver folder, clear screen. And again, I'll do a ls-lha. So you see the whole Git, whatever we published, that is downloaded now. I'm going to go into that 21 simple demos. Okay. Now, let's look at the files here, ls-lha. Okay. So you see these are the files here. Now, let's go back to the GitHub for a second and see what instruction we have. So let's look at this README file. The instruction tells me, so what it tells me is there is a cas connection manager Python file. This is the code written by somebody. We are just downloading it and using it. So that particular file is actually where we'll configure the connection to Cassandra cluster. Okay. Next thing is there are a bunch of other files where there is another Python file called get cas cluster info. Okay. And there are other things in here. We don't have to look at all that right now. What we'll do is we'll switch back to our server or our machine, and we'll use this. Let me clear screen. We will VI this cas connection manager dot Python file. Okay. What it is you just have to specify. You always remember, okay, whenever you're writing any driver code with Cassandra, you are not going to specify all your Cassandra nodes. That is a bad practice. You're going to provide 2 or 3, not more than that. Okay, remember, 2 or 3 nodes of your Cassandra cluster. Driver itself is very intelligent. On your first handshake between driver and the Cassandra, any driver, Java driver, Python driver, Perl driver, Go driver, anything, it will ask the cluster, say, hey, tell me about yourself. How many nodes are there? How many data centers are there? So during that handshake, it will be able to figure out what's going on. In here, I'm going to specify, I will specify 2 nodes, okay, 53. So remember, these are my IP addresses for my Cassandra cluster. Then what is my username password? Actually, there is a small trick here. On this cluster, I did set up Thor, but the password is very interesting. Okay. So we did 2 changes here. One is you specify what is your nodes, contact points in a specific format. You specify what is your Cassandra port. If at all you are not running on the standard port, then you specify the port. You specify what username should be used to connect to the cluster, what is the password for that connection, and key space. Well, you can select a key space. Now on this cluster, I don't have any of these key spaces, so I don't have cas demo key space. So I'm just going to say system key space, right? Just for checking. Now I'm going to save the file. We are not going beyond this particular change. We only specified the Cassandra related details. Okay. So what we were doing earlier was we configured our Cassandra connection manager file to specify our Cassandra information so that we can connect to our Cassandra cluster. What I would like to do next is I'll just run this particular test file, which was written by the programmer. All we are doing is just running it. So what it is it's a Python file. You can open it and look at the code. But here, how you run the Python code is you just do Python get cas cluster info. Okay. So what it did, you see how quickly it executed. First of all, what it did, it went and connected to HZD cluster. Okay. What does HZD means is it is Horizon Zero Dawn. You can do the research on what is Horizon Zero Dawn. And this particular cluster is running 3.119 version. This cluster contains 3 nodes. Okay, and program is done. So that proves that we know how to configure and connect to our cluster with this Python. And the code, we did not write this code. It was available on GitHub. We just got it and everything seems to be good. Okay. Now, if you want to do some more testing with Python, you want to learn, you open this Python code and go through the Python code. Now the intention is we don't have to write this Python code because somebody else wrote it for us. What we'll do next is, you see how I'm in the second folder, which was the 21 simple demos. What I'll do is I'll go into sales application generator. Okay, or let's talk about this one. This is the third folder, which is sales app, meaning it's a sales application, auto sales generator. Okay, so there are a bunch of Python files again here, but there are also familiar files like CQL files, which are Cassandra query language scripts. So let's look at the README again. Okay, So obviously in this also you're going to configure the CAS connection manager PY. Now, what we'll do, we'll go back into our machine. We'll go back to that folder 3.1. Okay, clear screen, list ls minus lha. So first thing we want to do is to configure our CAS connection manager.py. So we will open this CAS connection manager.py. Remember, like the previous steps, I'm not going to explain too much now. We just specify that we have 2 nodes out of the 3. I'm not specifying all nodes. I'm going to connect to my Cassandra cluster using sales user with this passcode, and the key space name is sales. Okay. Only thing I specified here is my contact points. Save it and close it. Okay. Now let's go back to the GitHub again. What it tells me next is, okay, there are 3 SQL shell scripts we got. Okay. First one is the key space creation. So let's look at what is key space creation. And the next thing will be sales table creation, and then load data in lookup tables. Okay. So let's actually click on this and see what is written inside. Okay. Lot of us know this code. So let me just increase the size. Let me just make it raw and then increase the size. Okay. So you can read it a little better. Now, what it is doing is it is creating a key space sales with replication factor of this. Okay. Now I don't have the West data center, so I'm just going to copy that much. And then I will go back into the client where I was running. This is the Cassandra node, one of the nodes. So here I will do SQL sh. And also, because if you remember, we can do describe key spaces. You don't see the sales key space. I'm going to create the sales key space right now. Okay. So I'm just going with the network topology strategy for replication, and replication factor East data center to 2 copies in East data center. Okay. So step 1, we created a key space. Step 2, it is telling me I have to create a user who will be owning this particular tables inside the sales user key space. So they will have permission to read, write and all. Okay. So remember here again, I'm only giving select and insert, delete and update. I'm not giving permission to the sales user to create objects inside the key space. So it's a limited privileged user. Okay. So I just copy paste and create that user. So you can see sales user has key space sales, permission granted is only select or modify data. He cannot, he or she, this user cannot create objects in that key space. Okay. So that's all we want to do there. Now switch back to, switch back to the GitHub and see what is the next step. So let me go back here. And then this was the first file we looked at, first SQL file. This is the second SQL file. Okay. Now what it has is bunch of create table commands. Okay. Now one easy thing to do here, you can read through, this is all Cassandra, very cleanly explained and written, commented out. So I'll just copy this whole thing and paste it on my SQL shell. Okay. So it is going to create bunch of tables which are required for the sales application, and all the tables are being created using the root privileged user or the Cassandra admin user inside the sales key space. Okay. So let's do one small thing here. Use sales key space and describe tables. So this was freshly created just now. We created a key space, we created tables. Now there are a bunch of tables. You can read through the table names and understand what they are. Let's proceed to the next step. There is a third SQL file we'll go and look at. So we'll go here and look at some. Okay. So basically here, what this particular user is saying, there are a bunch of lookup tables and you load the data. Say basic insert statements into bunch of tables. So I'll just copy all this and say ls minus lha in temp folder. Is this file existing? Okay, you can see that file is existing. So like that. Okay. What I'm going to do is SQL sh, okay, minus minus file equal to, I'm going to specify this file. So instead of specifying only the file name, I'll specify the full path. So this is how you can run a SQL script on Cassandra. So it was able to insert some data into the tables. There are no errors now. Good. Now what we'll do, we'll use a nice tool here. So you must be aware that DataStax has a tool called Dev Center. Okay. So let me go back here to show you what the Dev Center looks like. So let's go back to the tools under DataStax. There is a Dev Center right here, last one. Okay. I would like you to first read one major thing you want to understand. This tool is no longer being developed. So this tool is end of life. If you're using this tool, it will soon become, defunct. So it will not work anymore. So not telling you not to use it. Okay. But just for convenience sake for today, I'm using it. So I have the last version they developed. So here is my dev center. And I'm going to connect to my Cassandra cluster. And I'm already connected to this cluster. And then I will pick a key space sales. And then you can also expand this to see what tables we have. Okay. Now, I just want to see the data we loaded, right? So let's say, for example, select star from sales dot lookup email servers. Okay. So this is one of the tables we loaded data into. So we want to just see how the data looks like. So I'm going to just run this. Okay. So you can see it was able to load this data. Data exists now in the table. All good. So this was the initial lookup data we loaded. Okay. Let's go back into GitHub and see what is our next step. So we'll go back into the folder and go to the README. And then we finished this step here, which was the 3 SQL scripts. We created a key space. We created bunch of sales tables and we loaded the initial lookup data. All good. Okay. Now, so imagine any sales application, right? What happens is I'm a sales website. Imagine I'm Amazon.com. My user comes into Amazon.com. So we need to identify this is the user. And Amazon.com, or let's not call Amazon, let's say my sales website sells some products. Okay. And then users come in and buy those products from us. So there are 3 Python files here. One is called generate users, generate products, and then generate orders. So what it is doing is first time you will typically this particular 2 commands or 2 Python files, you'll need to run only once. That means you're preloading your users and products. Okay. So it is expected to run only once. Remember that part. What I'm going to do is switch back into our client here. Okay. I'll go back to our Python client. Remember, clear screen, ls minus lha. Okay. So you see, this is the first users Python code. Now, what I'll do before I generate anything, I will go back into the dev center. Okay. And then you see how we have sales key space has a table called users. I'm going to run this query, select star from users. And you see there are no users, actually 0 users right now. We don't have any users in the existing table. Okay. Now, from Python code, what we'll do, we'll say Python generate user, I generate two users, okay, just for testing whether it is working or not. And it tells me that two users generated. Basically, if you had connection issues at this point of time, you'll get error. You'll say something went wrong. I was not able to connect to the database server. But since Python was able to connect to our database and it was able to insert those two records or two users, it is saying two users generated. Let's make sure they got generated. We'll go here and we'll see, for example, here we got randomly generated email addresses, randomly generated usernames, their phone numbers. These are fake. These are not real phone numbers. They came from iPad. One came from iPad, one came from Firefox browser. They came from these states in US, and that's the only user record. Okay, so that's the user record we have. Next, we'll see, we will have to do products. Now, obviously, on my sales website, I need to generate products. I need to sell products. So there are no products in the products table. So what we'll do, we'll next generate products. Okay. There is another Python file which we are running, and we are generating two products. Let me generate 5 products just for fun. Okay. Now we have 5 products. We can go back and run the query again just to see if the products got generated. I can see what is the category of the product. Let's say music. I love songs, music. So music. This is the product code internal to sales website. Some randomly generated description. What is this product and what is the product name? Some product price. Let's say CD cost me $38. And how many quantity on hand we have. The sales site has 4,000 pieces of this item. Okay. Now, based on this users and products, we are ready to sell our products. Okay. What we are expecting here, the program itself expects something. So what we'll do, I'll show you what I'm going to do here is PWD. I'll go back here and then CD this, okay, clear screen. And then clear this screen also. What I want you to notice is on the GitHub, it says we need to generate users, typically executed only one time during initial setup. Code will expect you to generate 10,000 users. Okay. 2 users and 5 products, no use, right? We are on Cassandra. Let's do big data. So we will generate 10,000 users. Okay. And let this run. I will go to the other window and I'll say Python sales generate products. I will say 50,000 products. Okay. Now this also is documented on the GitHub. I'm not doing anything on my own. It's written here. It says it will expect you to generate 50,000 products. Now you are welcome to generate 100,000 users and 100,000 products. No problem. As long as you have space on your server and your tables are able to handle it. Okay. Now, while these things are generating, what I'll do is I'll just watch them. See, this is the generate users and this is the generate products. Okay. Those are the two things which are running. Let me actually exit from here. I don't need to be on the Cassandra box. These two are running. While they're running, we can go here and say, now we'll run very bad query in Cassandra. Never run this in production. I'm counting how many products entries are there in the table. Okay, there are 3,000 of them. So it is continuously generating using that Python code. You can see. Okay. Now, so this will take some time. Let's also check the users. We are generating 10,000 users. So let's see if users are getting generated. And it is running 2 statements right now. So it should give us 2 results. Okay, it is looking for consistency and all. It did not. Okay, don't worry about it right now. Let it continue to do the job, and let's put it in multi-exit mode. Okay. One beauty with this MobaX term, you can connect to, let's say I have 8 nodes in your Cassandra cluster. I can connect to all 8 nodes and submit commands to all 8 nodes. Okay. So that is the multi-execution mode. I love this option. You can run exactly same command on 8 nodes in one shot. So that is the good thing about MobaX term. Now, while these things are running, right, let's talk about something else. So um, my YouTube channel is pretty resourceful. Okay, there are several topics, mostly Cassandra, Spark, and Oracle, and there are lots of videos you can browse through and watch. Okay, now what I would also suggest is, if you are not already following me on LinkedIn, so if you go to linkedin.com. Okay, so what you do is you look for Sarma Paidipalli and you'll find me, my profile. Obviously, I'm logged in, so I'm looking at myself here. Try not to send me a connection request. I might reject it. Just follow me if you want to get my updates, and that's good enough. Okay. So look at my LinkedIn that has lots of resources. Look at my GitHub, which has a lot of different projects here. Like I'm working on Prometheus Grafana, that is also published here. You can learn about Spark Cassandra connector, and then there are a lot of administration scripts for Cassandra. Like say, how do you auto start your Cassandra? I even always include the DSC monitoring scripts. There are a lot of things here which you can check and learn. A lot of videos here. I would definitely like you to check and see if you like any video. Always click on like, because when you like somebody's work, it's always good to appreciate that work. And obviously, this particular video recording will become available on the same YouTube channel. Okay, let's go back and check. So we generated our 10,000 users. You can see users got generated, but products is still generating. So let's go back here. And then I'm going to just comment this out and run only this query. So I got 10,000 users generated. Let me do limit 100. I'm going to look at the data, actual data, which is in that users table. And then look at some data. So looks good, like they came from different places, they came from different phone numbers, and they registered to our website now, okay, with different email addresses and stuff. Now, let's see how many products are generated. So let me just delete that. And then let's run that query. I know it's a very bad query to run on Cassandra. We never should be running the count commands, count how many counts of records are there. Very bad query. Okay, so we are at 40,000. I'm just waiting for it to finish all 50,000 generation. Then we'll go to the next step. While that is going on, we can actually look at the next step on the GitHub. Okay, so we'll go back to finding python-cassandra-driver. Look at the sales app. We are reading this. We actually working on these 2 steps. User generation is complete, and then generate products, that is running right now. We are generating 50,000 products, which we are ready to sell on our website. Now, this is the last step. What it says is you can run this particular sales app, generate orders, and whenever you generate, it will automatically generate some orders for us. Okay. So before we run this command, what I would like to do is to review 2 tables inside our sales key space, we look at sales underscore orders, which is a order generated. I mean, if at all sorry, there are no rows actually. I'm going to just do star. And you can see here, there is an order date. Actually, we can expand this to sales orders, columns. And you can see there are a bunch of columns here. So there is an order date hour, which hour that order was placed. What is the order timestamp? This is perfectly designed with Cassandra in mind. You see, we always talk about denormalization. So if at all you can denormalize for your particular use case, we suggest you denormalize, right? That is why you see the same date in different formats and 3 columns for that. Then we have an order code. There is a order actual shipping date, discount, how much discount was applied at the order, and different fields like say who purchased this particular product or products. Then there is another table called sales order products, and let's look at this one. So the sales order is like a master table where only the order related information is there. And then we have the order products, which tells us in that order, what were the products purchased. So you can see order date, order code, and then what was the product ID which was purchased, what is the category, what product code was that, what is the product name, what is the price, and what is the total price, and how many quantities were sold during that order, right? So these are the 2 order tables where this will be generating data once we start our order generation. Okay, let's go back and see if orders got generated. So you can see, products got generated. So what we did essentially, we ran this particular sales app generate users code, and we generated 10,000 users. Same way, we executed something called generate products, and we generated 50,000 products. Okay. So far, we did not write single line of Python code. We just executing the code. That's all. Now, going back, what is the next step is, you remember we have to generate our orders. So there is a Python code which is provided to us, Python sales app generate orders, and that's it. You don't give any parameter. Okay. Now in the output, if you notice, what it tells you is, this was the timestamp. I was able to generate 7 orders for now when I executed that code. So let's go back into Dev Center and look at the orders. So there should be 7 orders, and you can see they're all generated at different time. There are different hours, and there are order discount. There was 5% discount on this row, and you can see that order was $1,700 nearly. And then tax is also collected. So basically order total itself is $1,800, and we sold order number of products. I think, see here, number of products. We sold 5 products from different categories for this user, whoever is this Android tablet user from Missouri. We were able to sell this many orders, right? Now, what you can do, you can actually go to order products. We can do order products, search, and see what we sold. Okay. So you can see these are all the products which were sold. Like say, for example, this is the product ID. This is from the category movies. The movie cost was $23.68. The guy purchased, or whoever the user was, he purchased 4 of them, and the total cost was $94.72. Okay. So basically, without doing anything, we just got the Python code and made it running. And now we are able to generate data into our Cassandra database. Okay. Now, what is the next step? Next step is look at the cron tab entry. Okay, so let's look at this file, which is the cron tab MD. Actually, I can click on that cron tab MD here and see what is written inside. Okay, so let me just put it in raw mode, understand what it is. So we all know about cron tab. Basically, once you put an entry in your cron tab, that particular script or a Python code will be executed at an interval you specify. When you specify minutes as star by 4, meaning every 4 minutes you run this code. Okay. So you are actually essentially scheduling something to run on your machine at a regular basis. Okay. And then write the log into a log file. That's what you're essentially telling. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is copy this thing, okay, and put it on my notepad. So I'm going to just bring it over here. Just bring it over here. Okay. I'll put it in the word wrap mode just for reading sake. Easy to read. Okay. Now remember, the path this particular program is in a different path. It's not in the same path. Okay. So first I would like to put it in the same path, or maybe we find out what is our path, right? So we can do one thing is we can just match this path. Okay. So for example, I'll just say, okay, so you guys know this particular tilde symbol. In Linux, what does tilde symbol mean is what is your home folder. So you can say, for example, cd tilde and pwd, it goes to your home folder. Okay. So I don't need to know what is the exact path. So here, my home folder is this for this particular machine. So I'm just going to say tilde, and I'm going to create a Python folder, mkdir python, okay, and then cd python, right? You can see there are no files here. Now what I'm going to do is I'll just bring all the files from this cp, all the files from here to local. Okay. So I did that quickly, but I'll show you what I did. So you see, this is the current folder, ls minus lha. You see all your original files are here. Okay. Now what I'm doing here is I'm specifying that you use this, and also the log file, you write it to this. Okay. Now this is my cron tab entry. So I'm going to take this. Actually, I'm going to make this run every 2 minutes because we don't want to wait 4 minutes. I'm going to put this into cron tab. Okay. So cron tab minus L will print there is no cron tab for PyCass user. So I'll say cron tab minus E for editing. And then in this cron tab, I'm going to paste my command. So what I'm telling is every 2 minutes, every hour, every day, please run Python, this particular Python program. Whatever output is there, put it in that log file. So then you save it, and then let me do this. So you see, this is your cron tab entry. Okay. Now, what I can do now, just sit here. We don't have to do anything now. We just have to tail this file, tail this log file. Okay. That log file does not exist because we have to first have that program run on the first minute. It did not execute yet. Okay. So we'll just wait. Now at this point of time, actually we are done with the presentation. We configured Python Cassandra driver. We got the project downloaded from GitHub. We configured the connection to our Cassandra cluster. We configured or created all the required key space, tables, and the lookup data. Then we generated, using the Python code we downloaded, we generated the users and products. Finally, now we also configured an auto generation program which will run every 2 minutes and keep pumping data into our Cassandra cluster. Okay. Now let's see what it is doing in the background. Now you can see, for example, let me cancel that. And I'm just tailing my log now. Just leave it there. So you can see first time it executed at 10:44 a.m. and it was able to generate 20 orders. Okay. Now go back into Dev Center here, and then we look at how many orders are there. Let's just do a count now instead of, I know that count is very bad for Cassandra, but we'll do that for now. You can see 27 orders are there. Okay. If you wait 2 minutes, another random orders will be generated. So at this point, we are done with the whole session. So tell me who wrote this Python code?
I think you only written the Python.
No doubt, right? We went to the GitHub. You can see my
Yes.
picture there.
Uh,
So this is the GitHub we are browsing all the time. And this is written by me.
So that's great.
Yeah.
That's really great.
So why I wrote that? As I said,
Relate.
you have Cassandra clusters, but you don't have any data. So here, without doing anything, you put it in cron tab and you're getting data, right?
Data, yes. Data is automatic.
Correct. Now we automated a data generation program, which almost looks like there are sales happening. And every 2 minutes it is, see, first time it generated 20 orders. Now there are 16 orders. Okay. So this is very good usage if you really need to generate data and at a rapid uh, phase, right? See, for example, you can tweak this particular Python code and say generate more orders per every session, every time it generates orders instead of generating small number of orders, right? Let me show you how you can do that. So I'm in the Python folder, and if you look at the files here, so this is how we are generating the orders. So this is the Python code, right? Open this Python code, and it is very clean to read. So you see this Cassandra read consistency, write consistency. We learned about all that Cassandra consistencies, right? Now, if you scroll through a little bit, what it is doing is, you see, every time it is looping, it is generating a random order between 1 and 4 to 22, right? I can just tweak this to 400 orders to, let's say, 2200 orders. Okay. Now, what you're doing is essentially you're increasing how much order should be generated every time this runs code. Okay. So I'm just generating a new, after modifying that small range, you can look at the Python code. It is very easy to understand. Python just looks like simple program. Now it is generating not 20 orders, but it is generating somewhere in thousands. So you can actually tweak this and you can have 4 client machines running the same code, but they're all pumping data into your Cassandra and you're getting millions of rows within like 1 hour time. That is where the big data is, right? Our Cassandra is not for like 100 rows data. So obviously this program will help you generate that much data, and it looks like real-time data. There is nothing less than a real-time sales application. So you can see that sales data is being generated right now. Let's go here and just do a query. And you can see 1200 orders generated so far. And probably, your cron tab is also fighting with generating this data, because cron tab is also running every 2 minutes. And you can see in front of your eyes, I generated 400 orders already. Okay, so that's enough about Python Cassandra driver. Let me show you what I'm working on, and most likely we'll do a presentation very soon about this. So we'll look at one small thing here. In my GitHub, I'm published a Prometheus Grafana metrics for Cassandra. And what I did with this dashboard, if you want to see early version of the dashboard, 192, 168, let me go to 91, 3000. So this is a Grafana dashboard. Okay. Now this is what I'm working on right now. and soon we'll be able to show you a demo. I'm going to log into this Grafana. So your Cassandra is busy doing stuff. So you want to visualize what it is doing, right? So obviously what it does, so you can pick a cluster, and once you pick a cluster, it has data center. If you have multiple data centers, you can pick all or specific data centers. And then you can see how many hosts are in that data center. You see 4 hosts now. Excuse me. You can see which key spaces are there, and you can see which tables are there in those key spaces. Now, let's look at the system summary. So there are 4 servers I'm monitoring with this Grafana. You can see each server, what kind of operating system it is, how much RAM is used, how much CPU is used, what is the IP address, how much time it is up and running servers wise. Then there is storage. So like each server has multiple storage mount points, and we are looking, everything looking good. The 4th one looking little bit high, 27%. So maybe we want to verify what is stored there. It also has this CPU and RAM usage graphs. Basically, it shows where are the spikes. So you can see, for example, here, PS1 server was 100% CPU usage. 2 times it happened on 2 different servers. So you can basically go verify why you're having that spike. And then you can look at the Cassandra nodes. Now, what you're seeing here is very special kind of cluster. I'm running 4 different versions of the Cassandra. So that's why you see some metric differences here. But this is again, this is a development cluster for Grafana itself. So on this cluster, you can see I'm running PS1 is running a version 3.112, 3.119, and then I have a beta version running, and then I have also DSC version running. So there are 4 different versions, 4 nodes. Okay. Other information like how many tokens per node, how much data is there. You can see data is varying between all, how much is the data repair, storage errors. Okay. Now memory. So this is all our Java heap. Okay. Somehow one of my servers, like this is PS4 server, somehow is occupying too much memory compared to the other servers. Okay. Let's go to cache. Let's say cache hit miss is a very important metric. So there are key caches, row caches, and counter caches, and you can monitor that whole thing in a nice, colorful way. Then you have query language. There are lots of queries running. Query is nothing but a transaction. Here, obviously, we don't have commit rollback, but these are transactions. So you can see how a prepared statement, how many are there running, how many are unprepared, and all that. So you can see more like green or red. Okay. So that's all about query language. And we all know about commit logs. So since a server restart, you can see how many completed tasks are there, how many on disk sizes, and how many are pending. One interesting thing I'm adding is also like, how many times a client successfully logged in or how many times they failed login. If you have too many failures, that means either somebody has a wrong password or some hacker is trying to get into your cluster. So that is very important to see. And then very interestingly, this is the key space size kind of look. So you can see how much at the key space level on each server, how much it is occupying. And then there is a graph nicely displaying whether you have spikes or not. Okay, how is your growth rate? So then we have table level metrics, which shows you which is the largest table in which server, what is the key space and table name. And then you can do filtering from here. Let's say, for example, you want to pick a specific table. Let's say sales orders. I don't want to see all the tables, but only sales orders. And you can see how they pan across all 4 nodes. Now that is what I'm working on right now. And you can see again that Oramat guy shows up. Who is Oramat? Me. So I'm building that Grafana dashboard from scratch, and hopefully soon I'll be able to show a presentation on how you can set up this on your clusters.
Yeah, see, obviously, like, all of them are like from my batch only, right? See, what we saw in our class, it was like developed by someone, some random guy. We got those dashboard and all. But what you are seeing on the screen is like completely built by Sharma, like from the scratch. Whatever each component,
Correct.
every single component was developed manually, every single thing.
Yep. And by the way, like I said, real users. I'm using this on, and it beautiful. It looks beautiful when you're showing it to your management. You say, hey, this is our Cassandra. This is how it is performing. Whether it is a small cluster, large cluster, you can actually show them so many different metrics like this, and it looks beautiful. Okay, so I think that's all for today. I planned a 1 hour session. We started 9:30. Now it is 11 o'clock. We did 1.5 hours, so we're good. Perfect. Thank you very much for being here. I will edit this video and publish it, and you'll all have access to watching that video again, and hope 1,000 more people will watch that.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking your time to explain
Yeah,
this.
thank you so much,
Very
Sharma.
helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone. Yeah, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharma.
Thank you. You're welcome. Oh, hold on 1 second, guys. Guys, hold on 1 second. I want to show you something. Do you see my avatar,
Yeah.
my picture?
Yes.
Anybody know what it is? Why it is?
PlayStation.
What is that?
PlayStation.
No, well, no. I'm talking about this
I'm
image.
not able.
Okay, so do you see this image?
Yes.
Okay, very deep meaning. Okay, first of all, I'm addicted to
Yes.
gaming, and this is game. Obviously, that is game. It is actually a concept art from Mortal Kombat. Okay, now how it is related to Cassandra? You see, when I'm working on Cassandra, I look like that. I become that kind of monster where I have 6 hands, right? But other than that, those 6 hands indicate there are 3 nodes on the left side, 3 nodes on the right side. That's a 2 data centers. And then I'm typing commands on every single node.
Yeah. Man, that is nice, good comparison.
Yeah. So that has a deep meaning. Cool. That's it. You have a great weekend, and obviously your weekend has ended. But have a wonderful week. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.